Good morning, sixth grade. Good to see everyone. So we are going to get started with our drawing prompt of the day. You will need your packets and a pencil. And when everyone's settled, we'll get started. So this is a drawing prompt that I created based on, I was inspired by our lesson. And it's a food, eating another food. So I had a question. Does anybody know what it's called when you give inanimate objects human-like characteristics? Yes, personification. So I was trying to draw a chocolate bar. It ended up looking more like a waffle. And he's being nibbled on by this popsicle. He doesn't seem like he's being malicious, but the pancake or the waffle seems a little surprised. So when you're starting your illustration, think about how maybe you could add some personification to your characters. Think about a background. If your images are very small, make sure you're doing a lot in the background. After you get started with that, I'll come around and take a look at what you're doing. Okay, I wanted to go over our lesson, just a little recap to reintroduce us back into the lesson. Here we have some samples of student work. You'll be creating an animated GIF using the eraser tool. You'll be adding crumbs, some texture to the food. But today we're just going to be working on our first layer. We're going to get that as polished and refined as possible. So we will continue working on that today. I also wanted to go over our enduring idea, which is exploration. So we will be exploring how to make an animation that tells a story. In this case, it's a food being eaten, using new tools. So throughout time, artists have used different tools and techniques to tell stories. So we will be using Procreate and our iPads and all the tools in that program to create this story. So here's the taco. Here's the pancake. You can see there's some really nice texture on the pancake. There's little crumbs, really nice details that tell the story of this food being eaten up. And we've got ice cream. You can see the drips from the ice cream. So does anyone have any questions about what we will be doing at this point? I would like to show you one of the samples I made. I chose a donut. I know you will choose much more exciting foods than a donut. This is all done on one layer. So if you go up to the upper right here, you can see I've got a lot of layers here. So this was all created based on this very first layer. This is why it's so important to get your drawing as refined as you possibly can, because you'll be using it throughout your entire animation. So you want all the shading, everything right where you want it, the texture. So if I needed to duplicate this layer, I would swipe to the left, and then you see there's some options there, and I would choose duplicate. I would turn off the layer. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So that's how you would duplicate a layer. So you would need to do that. You would need to add another layer if you were adding something like chopsticks, or if you had somebody was doing a chicken leg, if you had a bone. something that you would need to stay there at the end of the animation, you would need 2 layers to start to build your animation. And I'll talk about that as I go around the room and see what your sketches are. Okay, 6th grade, I'm going to do a little demonstration on building my first layer. So I'm on layer 1 right now, so I want to make sure all my drawing is on layer 1. There are many different choices here for drawing. I like to use the monoline because it's easy to fill in when I want to fill the shape, because it creates a nice crisp line. So I'm going to start with the donut. Sometimes my brush skips, so I'm going to go back in and patch up a little bit. So donut is kind of like a cylinder in a way. It's like a soft cylinder, so it's got this middle part. And if I wanted to add some icing, I would add that up here. Oops. Looking a little misshapen, but it's okay, it's still a donut. And the basic colors, I would go back to my color palette. I did put a couple colors that I liked that I thought would work for this little donut illustration. So I think I'll pick pink for my icing. I've got it up there, and I can just drag it over. Blood fill for the icing, instant icing. And for the donut bready part, I think I will choose this nice brown color here. And again, I can just drag it and drop it, and it auto-fills all the color into that shape. And I will bring it down here as well. So if I'd like to do some shading, a little bit of shading maybe around the bottom and maybe under the donut to give it a little weight, to make it look like it's sitting on a table and not just, floating around. The airbrush, I like the airbrush, the soft brush. And make the diameter, I'll try out 9. And the opacity is down pretty low. And I'm going to choose a slightly darker brown to do some of the shading. I like that one. So I'll take that color and I'll add it to my palette. Nice slightly darker brown. And I do like to zoom in when I'm doing some of the shading, so that is what I will do here. And I'm going to test it out a little bit. So maybe my diameter is a little too big. I can undo that very easily with the go backwards tool. And I'll give it another try here. All right, so I like the way that's shaping up. And it's a bread, so when I look at it, I think of a texture. So the shadow doesn't have to be perfect because I'd like it to look bready like a donut does. Okay, it's starting to shape up.
Okay, should I stop it?
The only thing I would ask is if there's any questions at this point about any of the tools, you can let me know now, or when I come around, I can help you with tools. Okay, 6th grade. Before you get started, I just wanted to review the checklist for this project so that you're making sure that you're working towards completing all the criteria for this project. So you want to make sure that your food choice is unique and drawn in a creative way. Your food illustration includes details such as shading, texture, color, the illustration is neat and refined, so you're cleaning up any little edges that need to be cleaned up. Eraser marks, when we get to that point, when you're doing the bite marks, you're going to want to make them look as realistic as possible. And crumbs, you want to include crumbs, juicy little details throughout your animation as well. And I think that's all the criteria. Does anybody have questions about the criteria? Okay, 6th grade. We have about 10 more minutes of class left. So let's take a few moments, and I've created an exit ticket for you. And it asks three questions, so just 3 short answer questions, and I'll read them off to you. So the first question is, name 3 things you learned while creating your eraser animated GIF. So these could be 3 things that you learned today. Could be a new tool that you used, or a new brush that you discovered, something that you learned. 3 things that you learned, actually. Your next short answer question will be, name 2 things about your artwork that you are most proud of. And your final question will be, name 1 thing you could do to improve or refine your artwork in the stage that it is now. So artists always reflect on their artwork, they observe what they've done, and then they refine it. They make revisions as they go along. That is what you'll be doing now. So take your time. It's in Google Classroom. That's where you can find the exit ticket. When you're finished with the exit ticket, you can submit it. And then you could do a little free draw while we wait for the class period to end.